Is it just me, or are opera singers kind of impossible to understand?
And there he lay all sweating, with his eyes all staring with pride. Oh God, return, oh God of hope, he is the righteous Savior.
Those were all in English. Oh boy, we got a lot to unpack today, and I'll tell you right now, we are gonna ruffle some classical feathers, because if I hear one more person tell me, Cait, it's not about the language, it's about the music, please. Oh my God. Part of choosing the voice as your instrument is combining language with music. It's literally the only instrument that can do that. And opera is even better because it combines literature and poetry together into music. Who else does that? Who else? I'm getting riled up. I'm getting riled up. It's too early in the video for this. So why is it that we can't understand opera singers? In this video, we're gonna break that down. We're gonna talk about what it is that makes language understandable, why exactly singing is different than talking, and what opera does specifically that makes the words pretty much impossible to understand. Hi, I'm Cait. I'm an opera singer, and this is why you can't understand opera, even in your own language. I need to go calm down. I'm gonna go make some tea. I made coffee instead. It could be argued, I don't need it. Could be argued. Also, it's Halloween. Well, at least it's close to Halloween. Check it out. For anyone watching in October, hi, welcome. For anyone not watching in October, that's cool. Don't mind us. Set that down, come back for you. Green screen, activate. It's pretty cool. Welcome to our chalkboard today, class. I'm not gonna show you everything here. We're looking for a little bit of retention, okay? A little mystery involved with what's gonna be revealed throughout this video. I'm gonna take a while to explain it. It'll all come together in the end. Gotta let me land. All right, so over here in Act 1, we're gonna get equipped with language. You gotta understand how language works for us to be able to get to everything else. We're gonna treat these like little tiny morsels. You're just gonna take these little tiny morsels and you're just gonna put them in your pocket, you know? Keep them for later, okay? I got my morsels. There's some really old coins in a coin jar. It's gonna go in my pocket. We're gonna save it for later. This is what you're doing with this information. Sorry, I don't mean to like lecture you right out of the gate. That's my bad. So the first thing we're gonna talk about is what makes language up? What are the components that go into language? And to cover this, we're gonna use something called the International Phonetic Alphabet, IPA. If you don't know anything about it, that's totally fine. But for those of you who do, you can nerd out all you want over this. Basically, it's those like letters that you see whenever it looks like somebody had a seizure on like the third keyboard of your phone, you know what I mean? That sort of stuff that's like next to the words in the dictionary. That has a purpose. That tells you how to pronounce the letters. Okay, this is IPA. Now let's go into vowels. We got 3 subcategories of vowels here. We have purity, placement, and length. We'll talk about each one individually here. So let's start with purity. Purity is gonna be either a diphthong or no diphthong. No, you didn't mishear me, Cleo. It's just a stupid word. It's like Uranus, diphthong, Uranus. They're just silly words. A diphthong is basically when you take 2 vowels and then you slide into them. So for instance, the word we sounds like a WE in our minds, but actually it's a combination of 2 vowels. If you slow it down, we. And when you put them next to each other and then you go faster and faster and faster, that's what creates that W sound. It's just a very fast ooh. So diphthongs slide, but pure vowels will stay put. If you're singing, there are a couple of different ways.
But I set fire to the rain, watch it burn as I touched your face.
I didn't show any opera examples yet. That's because you're holding on to your morsels. Keep this morsel in your pocket. We're gonna move on. That's diphthongs and vowel purity. Then we have placement. This is vowel placement, not vocal placement for any singers who are watching this. It's literally where you put the vowel like in your face as you're talking. So for instance, in American English, an ah sounds like ah, or an A, I should say an A. An A sounds like ah, but in British English, if you say an A, sometimes it might sound like aw. In Italian, an A will sound like ah, very forward, almost an ah at the front of the mouth. That's vowel placement. Then the last one that we have here is length. And this one is a little bit sneaky, but it's baked into every single language. We all have an idea of how long vowels should be in each word. We just might not put as much emphasis on it as in English, certainly, as other languages would. But if I take the word, for instance, coffee, speaking of which, gonna get cold if I don't drink it. If we take the word coffee, the emphasis is on the first vowel. That's the longest one. Coffee, coffee. Even if we made it monotone, because you could argue that the emphasis happens because the pitch changes. Cool, that's a good observation. Coffee, coffee. And it still sounds like the word coffee. But if we extend that second vowel and we make it longer, coffee, coffee. It sounds weird, right? Like it's not the length that the vowels are supposed to be. Some languages are even more obsessed with this than English is. Vowel length, I mean, not coffee. Although actually, here in the Netherlands, both are true. The length of a vowel will literally change the meaning of a word in a language like Dutch. So for instance, if you were to ask a Dutch person, mag ik een koffie? They're probably gonna look at you kind of weird. Literally changes the meaning of the word. For the Dutch contingency, yes, there is an a versus a difference, but the point stands. All right, all together, that is our vowel situation. Moving on to consonants. I'm gonna put my coffee down. Now again, there are 3 ways that you can pronounce the consonants. You have, I've forgotten what they are. This is the problem with not actually having the real chalkboard behind me. Please hold. We have the way that you actually speak. We have underpronouncing, so not pronouncing consonants you should be pronouncing. And then we have overpronouncing, which is pronouncing consonants that you shouldn't be pronouncing. Can't believe I got through that all without a mistake. Quick side note here. Obviously, should is a big word. I know I'm using it in this way intentionally because it's what you, like literally you, specifically you watching this video, think that a consonant should sound like in a word. It's going to be different for everybody depending on where you're from, what your dialect is, how you grew up speaking the language, whatever language it is that you speak. All of that will play into how you think something should be pronounced and how you personally understand the language that is being delivered to you. Anyway, where were we? Oh yes, consonants. So first we have pronouncing them the way that you speak. This is pretty self-explanatory, no? But I'll explain anyways because I am nothing if not long-winded. I'm gonna break something really difficult to you. Are you ready? The way that you use consonants is inconsistent. I know, I'm sorry. Doesn't matter what language you speak. I guarantee that the way that you pronounce consonants will be different depending on where they fall within the context of a word. Whoop. Excuse me, this is not conducive to a proper learning environment. Let's take the letter B. B says b, 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 bug, b, b, butter. I like so much butter on my toast, a simple dab won't do.
Huh?
Well, hang on a second. What is this B doing right here? This is what pronouncing consonants the way you speak means. That if you have a B in one part of a word and a B in a different part of a word somewhere else, you're going to say those two B's differently. It's completely dependent on context. If I said, I love butter so much, a simple dabbo won't do. I mean, yes, it's not like you won't understand me, but it does kind of make your brain go, It interrupts your brain's ability to process the language naturally, which leads us directly into our second point here of underpronouncing consonants. This is your classic mumbling, muttering, grunting. It's funny that like in English, all the words that we have for underpronouncing kind of imply that you are being quiet with it, but underpronouncing can be loud too.
To speak to me, I know it.
It's indistinct language. It's just a whole bunch of vowels just like sliding around together in a little vowel soup with not a single caret consonant in the way. Why? What is with me and soup in my videos recently? Now, this is not to be confused with whether or not a letter should be pronounced based on where you're from. So for instance, should we be saying Xander because an X should be pronounced? Should we be saying psychology because the P is there? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about when a language has a letter that should be pronounced a certain way and then not doing that. All right, underpronouncing? Cool. Now, overpronouncing. Last category for our consonants here. I'm forgetting what I'm saying. Overpronouncing is what happens when people emphasize consonants that we don't usually emphasize in normal day-to-day speech. Like logically, it feels like this should make it clearer, right? But that's not actually what it is. You're putting more emphasis on letters that people aren't used to hearing, and often it has the opposite effect. So for example, in American English, I think everyone knows, we don't really pronounce D's and T's all that much. So the sentence, for instance, of I didn't want to, but I did, perfectly intelligible, right? But if I were to pronounce every single consonant in that sentence, I didn't want to, but I did. It's hella distracting. I mean, technically I am pronouncing all the letters, right? But because we usually don't, it actually makes it harder to understand. That's over-pronouncing. Definitely also remember this one. Stick it in your pocket for a later morsel because we are going to come back. It's going to be haunting us. Halloween themed. So that's the basics of what holds language together. That's true in both speaking and in singing. But singing is still inherently a different thing. It sounds different than speech. We all know that. So what are the properties that make singing different from the way that we talk? And we come to Act 2. What makes singing different than talking? So what is singing, really? The first thing that we have here that makes singing different than talking is sustained pitch. When you speak, you're actually using a range of pitches that you go between to make the sounds that you make. So for instance, if we take the word cheese, you can turn cheese into a question and it sounds like cheese. Or if you take the pitch down at the end of the word, it sounds like Amanda Bynes.
Cheese.
And this doesn't even account for some languages that are tonal languages where the actual pitch of the word and the way that you say it will change the meaning. But for people who don't speak tonal languages, when we're talking, we don't even really notice that we're doing it. We don't really pay that much attention to how much our pitch fluctuates as we're going along. It just kind of happens. But in singing, we pick one pitch and then we stay on it for the whole time. And that's different than speaking. So that's the first big difference, yeah? A controlled sustaining of pitch. Okay, and then second on this list is a wider range of pitches that we use. Now let's go back to our chart here that we put together of the pitches that we use while we're speaking. Even in a voice that's incredibly expressive like mine, where I use a rather large variation of pitches while I'm speaking, I'm still limiting myself to a certain amount that I would do much more when I sing. I actually don't even know what that amount is though. I wonder if I could find that. Cheese. I don't know why I'm so pleased to know that now, but I am. Like, it's kind of cool. It feels like a BuzzFeed quiz or something. What kind of tree is the range of your pitch of speaking? I'm an autumn tree. Got like Anna Green Gables playing in the back of my throat. We've gone way far off the point here. Singing makes a much wider range of pitches than speaking does. That's the point. And when I sing, I can reach all of these pitches that I don't do when I speak. Then the last thing we have in this category here is rhythm. This is the way that you sing or speak the words, like the speed that you do it. Speech has rhythm, even if we don't really think of it that way. It's why every single American who's trying to do an Italian accent will immediately jump into like the longs and shorts of Italian. Because we just instinctively hear that it sounds rhythmically very different than English does. Poetry and classic literature make beautiful use of this rhythmic quality in language. Something like iambic pentameter, for instance. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Gorgeous. Singing just kind of takes the rhythm and formalizes it. So it'll tell you how long you should stay on each note, how quickly to move to the next one, how to group things together so that they sound in a certain speed. So rhythm is the third element here of what makes singing different than talking. Obviously, there are a couple of other things that make speaking different than talking. You've got things like resonant placement, breath control, vocal placement this time. Those things aren't quite as important when we're talking about what makes opera singers difficult to understand today, so we'll talk about those in a future video, but those are also in here. Now, obviously, making these changes in pitch and rhythm and length is going to affect the way that we understand the words. Because remember the pronunciation stuff that we had talked about before with our vowels and our consonants? Doesn't this stuff in singing kind of directly contradict this stuff? You betcha. The way that different genres handle the understandability of speech in singing, I'm like hung up on the word how understandability is not a word, but it definitely should be. Like, isn't it kind of ironic that understandability is more understandable than intelligible, but it's not a word? It's gonna sound very silly if understandability is actually a word. I'm gonna use it anyway. Different genres handle this trade-off differently. So you have genres like pop or musical theater or jazz. They care very deeply about making sure that the text is still understandable to audiences. Opera does not. Opera took one look at the rules of speech here and said, oh, that's cute. Anyway, get in, loser. We're going to hold this note for 14 bars. Which brings us beautifully to the real question. It's almost like I scripted it this way. Act 3. What does opera do that makes it specifically so hard to understand? Now we've arrived at the point here. This is what it's all about. This is the reason that English starts to sound like a whole nother language the minute opera enters the chat. Opera technique itself. All right, have you been saving your morsels? You've been counting them up? This is the time to get them out. They're all warm, hopefully. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take them and we're gonna go the morsels. That was so aggressive. Did I write this bit in just to be dramatic? That's neither here nor there. Because here's where we take everything that we've learned about singing and language so far, and then we take opera technique and put it on top of it to make it not understandable. I've broken operatic pronunciation down into a couple of different categories here because this is not just like some stylistic quirk that we all just randomly inherited. This is literally what is taught to us in conservatory. This is a learned education, y'all. All right, remember how we had vowels before? We're gonna take vowels again, except this time we're gonna go, Vowels can be broken out into 3 separate categories. Why is everything in this video in groups of 3? I really don't understand what's going on here. I didn't mean for it to be that way. It just, I don't know, it just kind of happened. 3 ways that we approach vowels in operatic singing. We clarify them, we modify them, and we split them. We'll quickly become clear why opera is so hard to understand. All right, we'll start here with clarifying vowels. Let's say that all vowels sit on a slider. We're gonna do a little slider here where we've got clear at this end and unclear at this end. In speech and in singing, a clear vowel is one that you can easily name. It sounds like itself. We would say that that's phonetic. So A in American English says ah. That would be a clear vowel. But A doesn't always say ah, does it? At least not in American English. So then all the way down at the other end here, we have some version of A that doesn't sound like A. In English, these would be unstressed sounds. It's the sound that everyone is familiar with, that American what is It's the one that makes you question the spelling of a word, you know, like is it an A? Is it an E? Is it an I? Is it an O? Is it a U? Who knows? It could be anything. That's an unclear vowel. Unclear sounds can also be a pretty extreme example of accents. So for instance, in American English, we speak quite nasally with all of our vowels. A nasal vowel would be considered an unclear sound. We would put it down here because using a nasal sound or not is not going to change the meaning of the word the way that it would in, say, French or something like that, where nasals really are important. If we were to take it out and clarify it, it would still be the same word. So nasals are also unclear. In opera, we are taught to sing clear vowels only, all the way to the edge of the slider. That is where we live in opera world. So when an opera singer gets a language that has an unclear sound in it, we're gonna assess where that vowel sits on the slider, and then we're just gonna kind of get all the way up here. I'm gonna make it a nice clear sound. I'll show you. We're gonna stick with a little Halloween-y theme here. We're gonna do a little excerpt from Jack's Lament. Love it. Oh, somewhere deep inside of these bones. Let's take this word somewhere. Now, if I look at this in my accent, I've got a in that some, and then a in the where, somewhere. I told you, American English is very nasal. Now, as an opera singer, it's gonna be my job to take a look at these 2 unclear sounds and move them on the slider to something clear. So let's start with that What is that supposed to be? What's the closest clear vowel to that? I mean, I know it says O as the letter, but saying somewhere doesn't really make that much more sense. I think it's probably closer to an in this case, maybe a slightly darker if you're more interested in the IPA version of that. But in any case, we're gonna slide that down to some variety of A. Okay, cool. Then we have our Remember, is an unclear vowel sound. That one's easy. You just take the nasal off of it, and then you move that down to the slider. Now we have Putting it all together, somewhere. Now let's go back to our phrase. If we were to clean up every single vowel in this phrase, it would sound like this. Oh, somewhere deep inside of these bones. Now this for me is second nature. I do this automatically. I've been doing it for so long, as does every opera singer, and really any classical singer would do this as well, because from a very young age, we're taught to assess this. We can sight read this into the languages that we're singing. But like I said, that's not the only thing that we do to vowels, right? We are not done. Now we have to modify our clarified vowels. What does this mean? Well, let's take the sound E. E is a very squished sound, right? Like it sits in your mouth and you have to like put your teeth really close together and your tongue like shoots up to the top of your head and you just it's very closed. But let's say that some tricky composer somewhere has written an E sound on a very high note. You necessarily have to open your mouth to be able to reach that high note, right? And what happens if you open your mouth while you're saying the letter E? E. That face will live live in your nightmares. Doesn't sound like E anymore. This is what modifying vowels means. You remember the pitch spectrum that we had before from speaking range versus singing range? The further that you move out of the speaking range in terms of pitch, the more you're gonna have to modify that vowel to accommodate the pitch that you're singing at. Or do you? I said we would ruffle some feathers today, didn't I? Because actually there are other ways to be able to hit high notes without having to modify, sacrifice the vowel. This is a highly subjective and intense topic of debate in the opera world because the reason that we do this the way that we do is that we are taught to keep a clear, consistent, beautiful tone. And we will sacrifice understandability in order to keep that beautiful tone to our voices. But who determines what sound is beautiful? It's in the eye of the beholder, right? Or the ear in this case. I'll make a whole video about this, but basically, just like fashion, just like interior design, the sound of opera changes through the years, through the generations. Opera singers today sound really different than opera singers even 50 years ago sounded, certainly 100 years ago. Like I said, there's a video coming on that. Suffice it to say that when we talk about opera singers today, the sound is very dark, very heavy, and the vowels are really modified. It's just what's fashionable. At least it has been for the last 20 years since I started studying opera. All right, so we've had clarifying vowels, we've had modifying vowels. Now we're gonna talk about splitting vowels, our final treatment of vowels as opera singers. Splitting vowels just talks about diphthongs. Remember diphthongs? Remember the bygone days, those old-timey days of joy and happiness 30 minutes ago at the beginning of this video. Two vowels sliding into each other like the words my or day, I, a. Classical singers are surgical about diphthongs. We will basically take a diphthong and then we will like stick a little scalpel in there and then split it apart. And then we will take the first vowel, syllable, vowel. We'll take the first vowel and we will sing that for as long as possible. And then at the very last nanosecond of the note, we will add that second vowel to create the diphthong. I'll show you. Let's go back to Jack. Oh, somewhere deep inside of these bones. Did you hear it? If you said it was the word inside, 5 points to Hufflepuff. Inside has two vowel sounds in it. Side, side. We clarify them and we get ah and E. So it's not inside of these bones. It's inside of these bones. Hear the difference? I don't know of any other genre that does this. I'm not being flippant, I really don't. I don't know of any other genre that does this. So a casual listener in today's modern age might not realize that this is happening, and therefore it makes it hard to understand. Traditionally, this is how opera singers would approach diphthongs, but things have actually kind of been changing a little bit lately, especially in modern composition, because composers, modern composers, are looking for opera singers to be a little bit less surgical about the way that they approach diphthongs. And guys, I am here for it. I am here for it. When I was 21, I was doing a coaching session with Carlisle Floyd on one of the operas that I was singing in with him. And we spent pretty much the entirety of the coaching session with him just telling me to take all the diphthongs that I was splitting out of the way that I was singing. It was cool. It was like, it was a pretty big game changer for baby Cait. We're getting there, guys. Hang in there. Next we have consonants. Remember how we talked about overpronouncing before? It's coming back. You could almost say that overpronouncing is kind of the consonants equivalent of exaggerating clear vowels. If you've seen any of my other videos, you know I harp on about this all the time, but it bears repeating. Opera is traditionally sung without a microphone. And if you are standing in a gigantic theater and your speech, your singing, has to carry to the back row, you have to enunciate. Like imagine if you've got a 3-second delay in the space. Somebody sitting even only 5 rows away from you is gonna have a really hard time understanding what you're saying if you don't truly give some oomph to the consonants, right? So we turn up the consonants. This is exactly what you're taught to do in any kind of public speaking. This is what actors will do. It's a very common technique. So let's go back to Jack's song here, and I will overpronounce the consonants. Taking into account all the vowel shenanigans that we've done before, we have, oh, somewhere somewhere deep inside of these bones. Of course, whether or not this actually does make it more understandable for you is completely up to your subjective opinion. We talked before about how overpronouncing doesn't really actually help as much as we think it might, but some people it helps. Doesn't help me. I don't know who they are, but I guess someone must like it. Now, there is something to be said for the fact that it is the way that opera technique is, at least today. Again, a video's coming about this for what was done historically speaking, but it is part of the style of today. I personally think we overdo it, but that's just me. Then our last little category here before we get to this little asterisk, don't look at that yet. This little category here, changing pronunciation. Up until this point, I've been pretty understanding. I'm an opera singer. I know why all of this stuff is done. I hope now that you do too. This is where I draw a hard line. I have left the opera community on this one. Opera singers today in school are taught to pronounce things differently than native speakers would speak them. Literally, we are taught it in our textbooks. I'll explain. In French, there are a lot of words that use what we would call a closed E in IPA. It sounds like this. E, le, te, me, se, de. Very common in French. Well, let's look at this sound. It's pure, it's clear, it's placed easily in the operatic technique. It's something that native speakers use in their language every single day in the year of our Lord whenever you're watching this video. There is no logical reason that opera singers should change this sound to something else, except that David Adams tells us to. This was one of my textbooks in conservatory. I no longer own this textbook, suffice it to say, but here on page 127, it literally says, spoken French uses E in these words, but sung French traditionally uses eh. Why? Tradition. It is known this is what we do. Why? Is this a tradition from 1950? Is this what people did when recordings came out? Is it from the 1700s? I don't know. Why is it that we are not asking French people? I mean, look at this big long list of words that we are told to pronounce in a different way than a French native would. What is this source trust me bro bullshit going on down here? I'm gonna fight you on this one. If French people don't do it that way anymore in modern times, why are we? How married to historical context are we gonna stay to historical performance practice to the point where people come in and they just have to like blow the dust off of the art form of opera to be able to marvel at it and go, sure wish I could understand this language that I speak. I'm not done, that was just ease. Oh, there's so much more ranting coming.
Roasted peanuts, cornstarch, solids, and black vegetables.
Again, in French. The French are, now granted, I get it. The French are is not the friendliest. It's not an it's not a r, it's a r. Like this word, croix. It is not croix, it is croix. That's how French sounds. That's what the people say. But again, in this lovely textbook, here is what I was taught. In singing French art song and opera, R has traditionally been pronounced as a flip of the tongue. R. In speech and popular singing, the uvular sound R is used. Judicious use of the uvular sound, however, has recently become accepted in some circles for classical singing. It is advisable for singers with moderate experience with French to use the flipped R sound. The uvular sound may be considered at some future point if stylistic trends call for it, but only if recommended by experts in French vocal music. Hang on, guys, let me just call my local expert in French vocal music. No, I know. It doesn't matter that you speak you think I care that you speak the language? This is not about whether you can understand me, okay? This is about whether I'm doing it correctly. Hi, yes. And this isn't just a French thing. This also happens in English. Like in English, I'm sure you guys all know, we roll our R's when we sing R. Why? Let the bright seraphim in burning row.
What?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Who speaks that way besides like frightfully posh aristocrats from Twiddly-Diddly upon Thames? So yeah, opera singers are taught to pronounce things differently than they are supposed to be for no other reason than tradition. Okay, and then our final asterisk over here that we've been ignoring the whole time. Some of you might be thinking to yourself, Cait, I understand opera just fine. It's that one singer that I just can't understand. Let's talk about that for a second. Individual singers. Obviously, no matter how long you study a language that isn't your native language, you're probably gonna make some mistakes in pronunciation if it didn't come naturally to you at a young age. You may overpronounce something, you may underpronounce something, you may accidentally change a vowel. Mistakes can be made for non-native speakers. There are also some individual singers who prefer a darker tone or a lighter tone, or they might like lean really heavily into something. They might over-modify something that makes it very difficult for you to understand them. But I give that an asterisk here because that's not dependent on opera technique. It's true in every genre. I mean, hello, Ariana Grande. My point is that even if an opera singer made no linguistic mistakes, even if they used the perfect technique, whatever that means to you, doing this stuff here in the opera technique is still going to make everything over here get so much harder to understand, even if it's absolutely perfect. This is why you, as a native German speaker, born and raised in Germany, going to a German opera house with a German director and conductor and German singers on the stage singing a German opera, cannot understand what they're saying. So there you have it. It's not your ears, it's just opera technique itself. And while yes, it's beautiful, I think so too, it's part of why we love opera, right? I do feel like we leave a lot on the table when we don't embrace how important it is to understand the text. If you haven't guessed it by now, I personally disagree with a lot of the language approach that modern opera technique asks for. I feel like there is a way to compromise in understandability and music delivery because there's so much that we're not doing. Like, if you think about how much we all love literature, how much we all love poetry, like presumably if you're seeing opera, you're there for that stuff too. At least I am. And I just think it's such a sad thing to not show that. Because like I said, there is a whole history of this not being done this way, of text not being understandable. A lot of you have pointed it out in comments on previous videos. Opera technique hasn't always called for such muddy text delivery. And I don't know what the fad is right now that's brought that around, but I can tell you, it isn't completely necessary to have correct opera technique. I think it's important to sing in a way that makes audiences understand what we're saying. And this has really made me think about my own approach to singing lately and the techniques that I want to take from what I learned in my time in conservatory and my time in the profession, and what I feel like I can leave behind a little bit as I move into whatever kind of singing I wind up doing in the future. Because I don't know, I don't think that we need to sacrifice a beautiful operatic sound to be understood. I think we just need to change our definition of beauty to include understandability. That, or I don't know, Paganini your way out of it. Oh look, and just in time, Black Cat comes down the stairs. Hello.
Oh no! This is Cleo. Say hi, Cleo.
Immediate distress. Okay, Louis Cleo.